Abigail Carter climbed onto the auction platform with her own 2 feet. She did not weep when the auctioneer pinned a wooden number across her chest like she was livestock. She did not bow her head when the crowd hollered her weight at her. 312 pounds of Amish woman standing tall in a New Mexico courthouse that had already decided she was worthless. The auctioneer asked for $20. Not a single hand rose. Abigail looked at every laughing mouth, every smug face, and her voice cut clean. Cowards! Every last one of you. Before this story unfolds, please subscribe to our channel. Follow Abigail's journey to the very end, and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from, so we can see how far her story has traveled. Now let us continue. The auctioneer had a voice like cracked leather. He stared at Abigail Carter standing on his platform and let out a low whistle. Well now, ma'am, that ain't the kind of mouth a woman in your position ought to have. I have whatever mouth I please. $20, the auctioneer said again louder. $20, gentlemen. She comes with 8 years of debt the bank ain't never gonna see otherwise. Folks, let's be reasonable now. A man near the front spat tobacco into the dirt at the foot of the platform. I wouldn't pay $20 for that. I wouldn't pay $2. She'd eat the profit before Sundown Earl. Look at her. Just look at her. Abigail looked back. She did not flinch. She did not lower her eyes the way the bishop had taught her to lower them. She had buried her father 2 months ago, and her mother 3 weeks after that, and she had walked herself to this courthouse in shoes that did not fit, carrying a satchel that held everything she still owned, which was a hairbrush and a Bible and her mother's wedding ring. She had nothing left to lose, so she did not lower her eyes. $15, the auctioneer tried. Silence. 10. Silence. Folks, the law says we gotta settle her debt today. Bank's foreclosing. If nobody bids, the marshal here takes her to the territorial labor camp out in Las Cruces, and I don't reckon any of you want that on your conscience. Laughter rolled through the room like a wave. Someone in the back hollered, "Send her on. They'll work the fat off her in a month." The marshal, a thin man with watery eyes, shifted in his boots. "Sir, we got to move this along." The auctioneer wiped his forehead. $5. $5, gentlemen. Last call now. Nothing. Going once. The crowd began to murmur. A few women pressed handkerchiefs to their mouths, not from pity, but from amusement. Going twice. That was when the door at the back of the courthouse opened. It opened slow. The kind of slow that made every head in the room turn before it was even halfway open. A man stepped through. He was lean and tall and dust-coated from the road. He wore a dark brown vest over a faded shirt the color of old bone, a flat-brimmed hat pulled low across his eyes, and a holstered pistol that sat on his hip like it belonged there. He did not look at the auctioneer. He did not look at the crowd. He looked at Abigail. He looked at her the way a man looks at a person. "Sir." The auctioneer cleared his throat. "You here for the auction? I'm here for her." "Beg pardon? How much?" "Sir, this here is a debt auction, not a—" "How much is the debt?" The auctioneer fumbled with his ledger. "Total outstanding obligation including court fees, marshal fees, and bank assessments comes to $187.40. The cowboy reached into his vest and pulled out a leather pouch. He counted out the bills onto the corner of the platform without ever looking down at them. He counted them out the way a man counts out something he has already counted before 100 times in his head on the long road from wherever he had ridden. 190. Keep the change. The room went so quiet you could hear the auctioneer swallow. "Sir, may I have your name for the record?" "Luke Walker." "And your purpose, Mr. Walker?" "The court requires—" "My purpose." He turned finally and looked at the auctioneer for the first time. He was not the tallest man in the room, this Luke Walker, but the room was suddenly his. "My purpose is, I'm taking her. As my wife." The crowd did not laugh right away. It took them a moment to understand what they had heard. Then the laughter came, and it came hard. A woman in the second row pressed her hand to her chest and cackled until she coughed. A man in the back slapped his thigh. His wife, Lord Almighty, his wife. You marrying that mister? You sure your eyes work? Maybe he's blind, Frank. Maybe he's poor and desperate, and the dark, and her ain't gonna make no difference. The cowboy did not turn. He did not even seem to hear them. He stepped up to the platform and held out his hand to Abigail. Ma'am, if you'll come down. She did not take his hand. She had not been touched by a man's hand in 3 years, and she did not know if she could bear the kindness of one now in front of these people, with all their teeth showing. Why? It was the only word she could find. Why what, ma'am? Why are you doing this? Reckon we can talk about that later. Right now I'd just like to get you out of this room. I don't know you. No, ma'am. You don't know me. No, ma'am. Then why? The cowboy's jaw worked. He looked at the wooden grain of the platform, then back up at her face. Because nobody else was going to. She came down off the platform. She did not take his hand. She came down on her own the way she had gone up, and her shoes pinched her feet, and her dress was soaked through with sweat at the collar and the small of her back, and she stood in front of him, and she was nearly his height, and she said, "My satchel." "Where is it?" "On the bench, by the door." He walked to the bench. He picked up the satchel. He brought it back to her. He held it out. She took it. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Mr. Walker, the court will need to record this union. There's a justice of the peace in the back office. I can fetch him." "Fetch him." "Yes, sir." The auctioneer scurried off. The crowd was still laughing. A heavy-set man in a banker's vest stepped into the aisle, his red face shining. "Mr. Walker, was it? You realize that woman's people threw her out. The Amish don't claim her. She's been living on charity for 3 weeks. She's lazy, she's slow, she eats more than 2 grown men." The cowboy turned his head. "Slow. You finished. I'm just telling you what you bought. What I paid for." "What?" "You said what I bought. I didn't buy nothing. I paid a debt. The woman ain't a thing." The banker's mouth worked. "Well, all the same, you ought to know what you're getting yourself into." "I know." "You don't know nothing about her." "I know enough." "What?" "I know she stood up there an hour and let you all spit on her, and she didn't cry and she didn't beg. That's all I need to know about a person." The banker's face went the color of raw meat. "You watch your tone, son. You don't know who you're talking to." "No, sir." "You—" "I don't much care neither." The justice of the peace came shuffling out of the back office. He was old. He had breadcrumbs in his beard. "Where's the parties?" "Right here, Your Honor." "This her?" "Yes, sir." "And you, Luke Walker. You got witnesses?" "I reckon the whole town just witnessed it." The justice grunted. He cracked open a leather book. He licked his thumb. He flipped through pages. Names in full. Luke Andrew Walker. And the bride. Abigail did not speak. "Ma'am, your name?" "Abigail Ruth Carter." "You consenting to this union of your own free will, Miss Carter?" She looked at the cowboy. He looked back. "Yes." "And you, Mr. Walker?" "Yes, sir. By the authority vested in me by the territory of New Mexico, I now pronounce you man and wife. May God have mercy on the both of you. Sign here." He turned the book. Luke signed first. Then he held the pen out to Abigail. She took it. She had not signed her name in 2 years. The Amish did not sign things. She wrote her name slow, with the pen held, the way her father had held a pen, and when she was done, she set the pen down on the book, and she did not look at the crowd, and she did not look at the cowboy, and she said, "I'd like to leave now." "Yes, ma'am." He turned. He walked. She walked behind him. The crowd parted, not out of respect, but out of the way you part for a person carrying something contagious. A woman near the door hissed at her as she passed. "You think he's saving you honey. He'll have you on your back by sundown and gone by morning." Abigail stopped. She turned. She looked at the woman. "Ma'am, I'd rather be on my back beneath a stranger than on my feet beneath the rest of you." The woman's mouth fell open. The cowboy halfway out the door paused. He did not turn, but the corner of his mouth moved just barely the way a thing moves when the wind hits it just right. Outside, the New Mexico afternoon hit them like a flat hand. Luke walked her to a buckboard wagon hitched in front of the courthouse. A roan mare stood patient in the harness. There were 2 saddlebags and a roll of canvas in the bed, and nothing else. "Climb up, ma'am." "I can climb up." "Yes, ma'am." She climbed up. The wagon creaked beneath her. She felt the eyes of the courthouse steps on her back. Luke walked around. He climbed up on his side. He picked up the reins. He did not move yet. "Ma'am?" "What?" "Before I take you anywhere, I want to say a thing." "Say it." "I didn't pay your debt to own you." "All right." "I paid your debt because I had the money and you didn't, and the alternative was a labor camp, and I don't believe in labor camps." "All right." "The wife thing." "Yes. It was the only way to get you out of there clean. The marshal would have stopped me otherwise. Single woman, no kin foreclosed property. He'd have called it custodial transfer. There'd have been paperwork. There'd have been a holding cell. I couldn't leave you there." "I understand." "You understand?" "Yes." "I want you to know I don't expect a thing from you. Not one thing." "All right." "You'll have your own room, your own door." "All right. If you want to leave, I'll drive you wherever you want to go." "All right. If you want to stay, I won't touch you unless you ask me to. I won't ask. I won't hint. I won't look at you sideways. You have my word." She turned her head. She looked at his face. He was about 30, she thought. He had a faint old scar along his jaw. He had eyes the color of weak coffee. He did not look at her the way men had looked at her before her body had become a joke. He did not look at her the way men had looked at her after. He looked at her like she was a person. "Mr. Walker." "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" "You asked me that already." "You didn't answer." He let the reins rest across his knee. He looked out at the road ahead, at the long flat dust of it. "My mother." "Your mother." "My mother was a big woman. She was the smartest person I ever knew. She read books. She did sums in her head faster than any man I ever met. She raised me alone after my father got himself shot in a card game. And she died of pneumonia in the winter of '78 because the doctor in our town wouldn't ride out to a fat woman's farm in the snow. He said it wasn't worth the trouble." "I'm sorry." "I'm not telling you for your sympathy." "Then why?" "I'm telling you because when I walked into that courthouse and saw you up there, I didn't see you. I saw her. And I will not stand by and watch it happen twice in one lifetime." She did not answer. She did not have an answer. He clicked his tongue. The mare started forward. The wagon rolled out of the courthouse square. The town watched them go. They rode in silence for a long stretch. The road went out past the edge of town and into the open country where the brush ran flat and gold to the horizon and the mountains stood blue and far away. Abigail held her satchel in her lap. She did not put it down. She did not loosen her grip on it. After a time, Luke spoke without looking at her. "You hungry, ma'am?" "No." "You will be." "I'm fine. There's bread in the saddlebag behind you, and jerky. Help yourself when you want it." "Thank you." "Ma'am?" "Yes?" "Can I ask you a thing?" "Yes." "Where's your people?" "I have no people." "None?" "My father is in the ground. My mother is in the ground. My uncle put me out of his house when the bishop ruled against me. My cousins crossed the street when they saw me coming. I have no people." "What did the bishop rule against you for?" She was quiet a long moment. "For being a burden." He did not say anything to that. He drove for another long stretch in silence. The sun was beginning to slide. "Ma'am." "Yes." "What was your father's trade?" "Why?" "Just asking." "He kept books. He was a clerk. He kept books for the seed mill and for the mercantile and for 2 of the bigger farms outside of town. He taught me how, from the time I was 8 years old." "You can keep books." "I can keep books better than any man I ever met." "Is that so?" "It is." She heard the small thing in his voice. Not quite a smile. Something near it. Reckon that's good news, ma'am. Why? Because my ranch books haven't been opened in 2 years, and there's a real strong chance I'm going to lose the place by Christmas. Then I expect we should open them. Tonight. Tonight if you want. I'll get you supper first. After. Ma'am, you ain't eaten. Mr. Walker? Yes, ma'am. I have not been useful to anyone in 3 years. I would like to be useful tonight. He was quiet for a beat. All right, ma'am. All right. The mare's hooves clopped soft on the road. The buckboard creaked. The mountains came no closer and no farther. Abigail looked down at her satchel and at her hands holding it, and she found that her hands were trembling just slightly, the way a hand trembles after a long cold day when warmth begins to creep back into it. She did not let him see. He did not let on that he saw. They rode on the two of them into a country that did not know them yet, and the dust rose behind the wagon and settled, and the town fell away behind them, and the sun bent low across the brush and turned the road the color of old gold, and Abigail Ruth Carter, who was now Abigail Ruth Walker, who had been called every cruel name a tongue could shape and had borne every one of them without breaking, sat beside the man who had paid her debt without ever once asking her to be smaller, and she said nothing, and he said nothing. And somewhere deep beneath the silence, very quiet, very small, something inside her began to live again. The ranch came up out of the dusk like something half buried. Abigail saw the house first, a low structure with a sagging porch, a chimney leaning west, and a window boarded over with a piece of pine that did not match. The barn beyond it had a door hanging off one hinge. This is it, ma'am. All right. Looked better 2 years ago. All right. He helped her down. She did not refuse him this time. The wagon had stiffened her hip, and she did not have the pride to pretend otherwise. Inside, he set her satchel on the chair of a small room with a narrow bed and a wooden chest. Door's got a bolt. I put it on this afternoon before I rode in. Before you rode in? Yes, ma'am. You knew. I figured. Word spreads. You came on purpose. Yes, ma'am. From where? 3 days' ride east. Heard about the auction at a way station. Heard a woman was going to be sold for nothing because nobody would have her. Didn't sit right with me. You rode 3 days for a stranger. I rode 3 days because my mother died alone. She did not answer. Books are in a crate in the kitchen. Whenever you're ready. I'm ready. Ma'am, you've been on a wagon all day. I'm ready, Mr. Walker. The crate held 6 ledgers. She opened the most recent one and read for an hour without speaking. Luke sat at the other end of the table and cleaned his pistol the way a man cleans a thing when he knows interrupting is the worst thing he could do. She set down the pencil. Mr. Walker. Ma'am. Who is Eli Brand? His hand stopped moving on the pistol. He's the man I sell my cattle to. He is the man you used to sell your cattle to. What? He has not bought a head from you in 14 months. That ain't right. I am looking at the ledger right now. The last entry from Eli Brand is March of last year. After that, you have 11 entries marked sold, and they are all in your handwriting and none of them have a buyer's name. Because I sold them through Brand. He says you did. What? 14 months of entries with no buyer name. You wrote them down because Brand told you he would handle the sale. He did not handle the sale. Or he did, and he kept the money. Luke stood up. He sat down again. That ain't possible. How much money has Brand paid you in the last 14 months? A long silence. He pays in installments. How much? Maybe $200 total. $200 for what should have been $1,200. At minimum. The market price is up. He's been paying you a third of what your cattle are worth and pocketing the rest. And you have been letting him. Luke put the pistol down. He put both his hands flat on the wood. He was my father's friend. He is not your friend, Mr. Walker. No, you will not see him again. Tomorrow morning we ride into town and we go to the bank and we get you a bill of accounting. Then we ride to Brand's office and we present it to him. Ma'am, you've been my wife 8 hours. And in those 8 hours, I have read your books. which is more than you have done in 14 months. So when I tell you Eli Brand is robbing you, I am not guessing. I am reading." He looked at her a long time. "All right. What else is in there?" She turned the page. "You also owe a man named Hollis Carver $112 for a fence line that I cannot find any evidence was ever built. I never bought a fence from Hollis Carver. He has signed a paper that says you did, with a mark that is not your mark. That ain't my signature. I know it isn't. I have 3 of yours from the last 2 years right here, and the one on the Carver paper is not the same. He forged it. He did. And we will deal with him too." He let out a long breath. "How bad is it?" "It is bad. But it is not what you thought it was. You thought you had failed. You haven't failed. You have been stolen from. There is a difference." He looked at her across the table. "Ma'am, you've been crying." "No." "Your face is wet." She put the back of her hand to her cheek. It came away damp. She had not noticed. "It is a long day, Mr. Walker. I will go to bed now." "Yes, ma'am." She closed the door behind her. She did not slide the bolt. She was not afraid of him. She lay on the narrow bed with her shoes still on, and she did not sleep, and she stared at the ceiling until first light. By breakfast, she had a plan. By noon, they were standing in the lobby of the bank in town, and Luke was holding the bill of accounting, and Abigail stood in her one good dress, with her hair pinned tight, and the banker, the same red-faced banker from the courthouse, was staring at them like they had walked in carrying a dead snake. "Mr. Tate, I want copies of every loan paper my husband has signed in the last 3 years." "Now, ma'am, those are confidential." "They are his papers. He is asking for them. Or are you in the habit of refusing your customers their own contracts?" "I am not in the habit of being lectured by—" "Mr. Tate, my husband has paid you $492 in interest in the last 2 years on a principal of $340. That means he has paid you back his loan and another $50 on top of it. The loan should be settled. Why is it not settled?" The banker's face went dark. "Compound interest, Mistress Walker. The terms." "The terms are usurious. The territorial limit is 12%. You are charging him 19. I have the papers right here, and if you would like, I can ride to Santa Fe next week and ask the territorial auditor exactly what he thinks of them." The banker did not speak. "I would like the loan papers, and I would like my husband's account marked paid in full, and I would like a written apology in your handwriting on bank letterhead dated today." "Mistress Walker, that is outrageous." "What is outrageous? Mr. Tate is a banker robbing a widow's son. Now, are we doing this in your office, or are we doing it in Santa Fe?" 20 minutes later, Luke stood outside holding 3 pieces of paper, and he did not seem to know what to do with them. "Ma'am." "Yes?" "He paid me my loan back, and he wrote an apology." "Yes?" "How?" "Because he is a coward and a thief, and cowards and thieves do not like daylight. You knew that going in." "I read his books last night, Mr. Walker. Yes, I knew." By the end of the 2nd week, Eli Brand had paid $812 in back accounts and signed a settlement that barred him from buying Walker cattle for 10 years. Hollis Carver had withdrawn his fence claim and apologized in writing to avoid a fraud charge. The blacksmith had been paid. The feed supplier had been paid. And Abigail Walker had ridden alone to 4 neighboring ranches. The first 3 turned her away. "My husband don't take counsel from women. We don't deal with the Walker place." "Ma'am, I appreciate the visit, but no." The 4th was a widow named Mary Esquibel. "You are the woman from the auction." "I am." "They said you cursed at the crowd." "I called them cowards. It is not cursing, it is accuracy." The widow Esquibel laughed a short, hard laugh, the first laugh Abigail had heard in years that was not aimed at her. "Come in, Mrs. Walker. Come in and tell me what you came to say." What Abigail came to say was this. The 4 ranches in the valley were each selling their cattle separately to brokers who pitted them against one another, and each was getting half the market price. If they pooled their stock and sold together through one broker of their choosing with a written contract and a posted price, they could double their income inside a year. They could pay their debts. They could survive. The widow Esquibel listened without interrupting. When Abigail was done, she said only, "Why are you doing this?" "Because nobody else was going to." The widow Esquibel looked at her a long moment. "All right, Mrs. Walker, I am in." Within a month, the Donnelly place was in. Within 2, the McKinneys had folded too, after their broker tried to pay them in scrip, and Abigail walked them through what scrip was actually worth. By the end of the 3rd month, the Walker Cooperative Abigail had named it, and nobody had argued, had a written contract with a buyer in Santa Fe, a posted price, and a payment schedule that did not depend on the goodwill of any single man in any single town. The first payment came in March. It was $1,640. Luke counted it out on the kitchen table 3 times. Then he looked up at her. "Ma'am?" "Yes. You saved my life." "No, Mr. Walker, I balanced your books." "It is the same thing." She did not answer. He was looking at her the way he had looked at her in the courthouse. Not the way a man looks at a wife, the way a man looks at a person. "Mr. Walker?" "Ma'am?" "You are looking at me." "Yes, ma'am." "Stop." "Yes, ma'am." He looked away. He looked back. "Ma'am?" "What?" "I cannot help it." She did not answer that either. She rose from the table and walked to her room and shut the door, and this time, for the first time, she slid the bolt. Not because she was afraid of him, because she was afraid of herself. The next morning, a stranger rode up to the ranch. He was a man in a city suit. He wore a small round hat that was not made for the sun. He had a leather case under his arm. He did not dismount. "I am looking for Mr. Luke Walker." Luke came out. Abigail came out behind him. "You found him." "My name is Caleb Henshaw. I represent the Atchison and Pacific Railroad. I have here a writ from the Territorial Land Office regarding the water rights on this property." "Water rights?" "The railroad has acquired the water rights to the creek that runs through your land. Acquired them from the original grantee. The deed is recorded in Santa Fe. That creek has been on Walker land for 40 years. The land is yours, Mr. Walker. The water is not. As of last Tuesday." He held out a folded paper. Luke did not take it. Abigail took it. She unfolded it. She read it. She read it again. The man in the city suit watched her. "I am sorry, Mistress Walker. I am only the messenger." "You are not sorry. You are a paid hand of a railroad." "That is true, but I am still sorry." She folded the paper. She did not give it back. "Mr. Henshaw, you will tell whoever sent you that this paper is wrong." "Ma'am, with respect." "It is wrong, Mr. Henshaw. I do not yet know how it is wrong, but I will know. And when I know, I will come for the man who signed it." "Ma'am." "Tell him." The man in the city suit looked at her for a long moment. He nodded once, slow the way a man nods when he has just understood that the easy part of his job is over. He turned his horse. He rode out. Luke and Abigail stood on the porch. "Ma'am?" "Yes." "How wrong is it?" "I do not yet know." "Guess." She looked down at the paper in her hand. She held it tight enough to crease it. The wind moved the brush at the edge of the yard, and somewhere a horse stamped in the barn, and somewhere farther off the creek that was no longer theirs, ran on the way. Water runs on, whether the law says it can or not. "Mr. Walker, I think a man has been killed for this land, and I think the people who killed him are about to find out that they should have killed me first." He did not answer her. He did not need to. She walked past him into the house, and he watched her go, and the paper crackled in her hand, and somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the years of being told she was nothing, beneath the auction platform and the bishop's ruling and her uncle's locked door, something old and hard and patient was waking up. And it was not afraid, and it was not tired, and it had been waiting all her life for a fight worth picking, and it had finally found one. She walked into the kitchen and laid the railroad paper flat on the table, and she did not eat that day. She did not eat the next either. By the 3rd morning, she was on a stage to Santa Fe, with a roll of money pinned inside her dress, and a derringer the widow Escobel had pressed into her hand at the way station. "Mrs. Walker?" "Yes." "You ever fired a pistol?" "No." "It pulls right. Aim left of what you mean to hit." "All right. You keep it close." "I will." In Santa Fe, she went straight to the Territorial Land Office. She paid a clerk $1 and asked for the deed of grant for the Walker Creek. The clerk brought her a leather book the size of a Bible. She read for 2 hours. She wrote down 3 names: Tomas Reyes, original grantee, 1844. Charles Petrie, conveyed to 1879. Atchison and Pacific Railroad conveyed from Petrie last Tuesday. She gave the clerk another $1. "I would like to see the death record for Tomas Reyes." "That ain't kept here, ma'am. Parish Church San Miguel." She walked to San Miguel. She paid the priest 50 cents for a candle and sat in his vestry while he opened a book that smelled of mildew. "Reyes, Tomas." "Read me the date." 8th of June, 1874. Buried the 10th, 81 years old. She did not move. "Father, read it again." 8th of June, 1874. If a man came to you tomorrow and asked you to swear that this date is correct, would you swear it?" "On any Bible you put in front of me." She walked back to the land office. She paid for certified copies of all 3 deeds. She read them on the stage home. The conveyance from Reyes to Petrie was dated November of 1879. 5 years and 5 months after Tomas Reyes was already in the ground. She rode the rest of the way home, with her hand resting on the derringer. When she got back, she found the barn smoking. Not all of it. A corner. Someone had set a small fire in the night, and Luke had put it out, and the smell hung over the yard like a warning. They came around midnight. 2, maybe 3. They did not stay to watch it burn. "No, ma'am. They wanted us to know." "You been gone 4 days." "I have what I went for." She showed him the papers. He read them slow. He read the priest's note. He read the date the way she had, and his face went. The kind of still a face goes when a man has just understood that the country he lives in is not the country he thought he lived in. "This deed is forged." "It is." "And the judge who recorded it?" "Either took a bribe or did not look. We will find out which." "And Petrie?" "Petrie does not exist. Or he exists, but he is a name on a paper. I went to the address listed for him in Santa Fe. There is no house there. There is a feedlot. The owner of the feedlot has never heard of any Charles Petrie." A ghost. A ghost. They invented him to bridge the gap from a dead man to themselves. Luke set the papers down. "Ma'am, they will kill you for this. They will try." That night, she did not sleep in her room. She sat at the kitchen table with the papers locked inside the wooden chest and the derringer in her lap, and Luke sat across from her with his pistol on the table. They did not speak much. When first light came, he made coffee, and she drank it, and they began. She rode to every ranch in the valley over the next 8 days. Not just the 4 in the cooperative. Every one. 23 places. She showed them the papers. She told them the date. She watched their faces. By the end of the 8th day, she had 11 ranchers willing to sign their names to a complaint, 4 willing to ride to Santa Fe themselves, and 1 an old man named Hollis Greer, who had known Tomas Reyes personally, willing to swear in court that he had buried the man with his own hands. The threats began on the 9th day. The first came as a letter slipped under the door. "Mistress Walker, drop the matter. You will not be warned again." The second came as a dead dog on the porch. Not theirs. Somebody's. Throat cut. The third came as a man on a horse who reined up beside her wagon and rode along beside her for half a mile without speaking. When she finally said, "Is there something you want, sir?" he tipped his hat and rode off without a word. She did not stop. She rode to the office of the only honest lawyer she could find in 3 counties. A man named Theodore Bean. He had a limp and a thin wife, and a habit of saying exactly what he meant. "Mr. Bean, I have a case. I have heard. You will take it." It will get me killed. It will get you remembered. How much money have you got, Mistress Walker? $200 in my hand, $1,200 in the cooperative account if the other ranchers voted, and every cent of every cattle sale we make from this day forward until you tell me to stop. That is more than I have been paid in 5 years. Then you will take it. Yes, ma'am, I will. The judge was a man named Cyrus Holt. Bean knew him. Bean did not like him. He has bought Mistress Walker. By whom? By the railroad, or by money that comes from the railroad. He owns 600 acres of bottomland outside Las Cruces that he could not have afforded on a judge's salary in 3 lifetimes. Then we will need to go around him. You cannot go around a territorial judge. You can if you go above him, to Santa Fe. There is a federal circuit judge who rides through next month, a man named Whitfield. He is harder to buy. Not impossible. Harder. If we can get our case in front of him before Holt has time to bury it. Then that is what we will do. It is 2 weeks of hard travel and $100 in filing fees and a real strong chance somebody puts a bullet in you on the road. Mr. Bean. Yes. I have already been put on an auction block and called worthless in front of 100 people. A bullet does not frighten me. He looked at her a long moment. All right, Mistress Walker. That night on the road home, somebody put 2 bullets through the back of her wagon. She did not see the man. She heard the shots. She kept the mare moving. Luke had insisted on riding behind her this trip 50 yards back. And when the second shot came, he spurred his horse and rode past her at a hard gallop into the brush, and there was the sound of one more pistol shot distant, and then nothing. 20 minutes later he caught up to her. His face was set. His shirt had blood on it that was not his. Mr. Walker? Ma'am? Are you hit? No. Is he? He is. Not dead. He spoke enough. Who? A man named Ramsey. Hired out of Albuquerque. Took $50 to ride out and put a hole in you. He is going to live, but he is going to do it from a saddle to the marshal's office. You took him to the marshal. I took him to a marshal. Not the local one, the territorial one. 2 days east. He would not have made it to the local one alive, and if he had, the local one would have let him walk. You have been gone 2 days. Yes, ma'am. And you did not tell me. No, ma'am. You were busy, and you would have argued. She did not say anything for a long time. Then she said, Thank you, Mr. Walker. Yes, ma'am. That is not enough. It is enough. The week before the federal hearing, the bank refused her a cash withdrawal. The mercantile in town would not sell her flour. A neighbor she had stood with at a baptism a month earlier crossed the street to avoid her. The pressure was coming down hard, the way pressure comes down when men with money begin to feel a thing slipping. She did not slow. She rode to every signatory on the complaint. She made each one repeat what they would say in court. She drilled them like a schoolmistress. Hollis Greer, who was 82 and missing most of his teeth, recited the date of Tomas Reyes's burial 14 times in one afternoon until Abigail was satisfied he would not stumble. 8th of June, 74. Buried the 10th. I dug the second shovel. His son Refugio dug the first. Again. 8th of June, 74. Buried the 10th. Mistress Walker. Yes, Mr. Greer? I have been saying this date in my head for 50 years. I will not forget it in a courtroom. I know you will not. I needed to know that you knew. Now I know. Now you know. 3 weeks later, in a packed courtroom in Santa Fe Federal Circuit, Judge Marcus Whitfield called the case of Walker et al. Versus the Atchison and Pacific Railroad. The railroad had 4 lawyers. They wore black coats and watch chains, and they smiled at one another across the aisle like men who had already won. Bean had Abigail. The lead railroad lawyer rose first. His name was Fletcher. He spoke for 40 minutes. He spoke about the sanctity of recorded deeds, the duty of the territorial courts to honor them, the danger to commerce of allowing every disgruntled rancher to challenge the chain of title on prime water rights. He spoke smooth. He did not raise his voice once. When he sat down, the judge turned to Bean. Counsel for the petitioners. Bean rose. He limped to the front. He held a single folded paper. "Your Honor, I would like to enter into evidence the burial record of Tomas Reyes, original grantee of the land in question, certified by the Parish Church of San Miguel." He laid the paper on the bench. The date of death recorded in this register is the 8th of June, 1874. Fletcher half rose. "Your Honor, the relevance. The relevance, Your Honor, is this. The conveyance from Tomas Reyes to Charles Petrie, upon which the railroad's entire claim depends, is dated the 14th of November, 1879, 5 years and 5 months after Tomas Reyes was buried." The courtroom did not breathe. Fletcher sat down. Bean did not stop. "It is the petitioner's contention, Your Honor, that the entire chain of title is fraudulent, that Charles Petrie does not exist, that the conveyance is a forgery, that a man has been impersonated in death to steal the water rights of an entire valley, and that the railroad, whether knowingly or not, has built its claim on a corpse." Whitfield read the paper. He read it twice. He looked at Fletcher. "Counsel?" "Your Honor." "How does a dead man sign a deed?" Fletcher opened his mouth. He closed it. "He does not, Your Honor. He does not. But the deed is recorded. Recorded where? In Santa Fe. By whom? By the Territorial. By Judge Cyrus Holt." "Yes, Your Honor." "Yes." Whitfield set the paper down. "Mr. Fletcher, I am going to suspend the railroad's claim of right pending a federal investigation into the chain of title and the conduct of the recording office. I am going to order Judge Holt's docket pulled for review. I am going to instruct the United States Marshal to take possession of the original deed and convey it to a forensic examiner in Washington. And I am going to advise your clients, Mr. Fletcher, that if any harm comes to the petitioner, Mistress Walker, or any member of her household, between this moment and the conclusion of that investigation, I will personally see that every man on the railroad's payroll between Albuquerque and Topeka spends the rest of his life answering for it. Are we clear?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Are we clear, Mr. Fletcher?" "We are clear, Your Honor." Whitfield looked down the bench. "Mistress Walker." "Yes, Your Honor." "You stand." She stood. "You did this with a parish record and a date." "Yes, Your Honor." "Where did you learn to read a deed of grant, Mistress Walker?" "From my father, Your Honor." "Who was a clerk?" "He raised a fine clerk. He raised a daughter who was tired of being told she was not one." The judge looked at her a long moment. "Court is adjourned." He brought the gavel down. The room exploded. The railroad lawyers were on their feet. Fletcher was shouting at his second. The reporters in the back were already running for the door. Hollis Greer, 82 years old, was weeping into a handkerchief that one of the McKinneys had handed him. The widow Esquibel was on her feet too, and she was not weeping. She was laughing the same hard, short laugh Abigail had heard the first day she rode out to her place. And she was looking at Abigail across the aisle and shaking her head like a woman who had seen something she had stopped believing she would ever see. Outside the courthouse on the wide stone steps, Luke stood waiting. He had not been allowed in. There had been no room. She walked out into the air, and she did not speak. He did not speak. He looked at her face, and he understood without being told. He held out his arm. She took it. Not the way a wife takes a husband's arm. The way a person takes another person's arm when her legs have just remembered all at once that they have been standing for 10 hours, and they are not certain anymore that they want to keep doing it. "Ma'am." "Yes." "Did we win?" "We have not won, Mr. Walker. We have only stopped losing." "That is something. That is everything." He walked her down the steps. The wind moved through the square. A boy ran past selling newspapers that did not yet know what had happened in the room behind them. Somewhere a long way off a train whistle sounded, and Abigail Walker, who had been auctioned for less than the price of a saddle, and who had ridden 3 weeks across a territory with a derringer in her dress and a date written on a paper folded against her heart, leaned for one short moment against the shoulder of the man who had paid her debt without asking her to be smaller. And she closed her eyes, and she did not cry, and she did not speak. And the empire that had tried to kill her began somewhere far away in an office she would never see to come quietly apart at the seams. The news came back to the valley on a Tuesday. Bean rode out to the ranch with a folded newspaper in his saddlebag and his hat already in his hand before he dismounted. Mistress Walker. Mr. Bean. They got him. Holt. The federal marshal arrested him at his bench at 9 o'clock yesterday morning. They took him out of the courtroom in front of the jurors. They took him out in chains. In chains. The auditor in Washington matched the ink on Petrie's signature to a clerk who works in Holt's chambers. Same bottle, same pen, same hand. They have got him cold, and they have got the clerk, and they are after 3 vice presidents at the railroad. 3. They are running, but they will not run far. The federal court has frozen the railroad's land office in this territory. There will be no more conveyances out of New Mexico for a year and a day. What about the creek? The creek is yours. Your patent is being reissued. The water on Walker land is Walker land water by federal order by close of business tomorrow. She did not speak for a moment. Mr. Bean. Ma'am. Stay for supper. I would be honored. That night, with Bean and Luke at her table, and the widow Escabel and old Hollis Greer, who had ridden over when he heard Abigail did something she had not done in 3 years. She laughed. It came out of her like a stranger. What is funny, Mrs. Walker? Nothing, Mr. Greer. Is something funny? Everything is funny tonight. Luke watched her across the table, and he did not speak, but the corner of his mouth moved the way a thing moves when the wind hits it just right, and Abigail saw it, and she did not pretend she did not see it, and the widow Esquibel saw her see it, and Esquibel said nothing, because Esquibel was not a fool. The money offers began the following week. The first was a polite one. A man from a Chicago land syndicate rode out alone in a sober coat with a written proposal and a clean shave. Mistress Walker, my principals are prepared to offer $50,000 for the combined acreage of the Walker Cooperative payable in cash on the day of transfer. $50,000. Yes, ma'am. For 4 ranches and the water rights. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Halloran? Yes, ma'am. That is 1/5 of what this land is worth. I have read the Federal Land Office surveys for this valley. I have read the projected freight revenues for the new spur line that will run through this region by '86. I have read your principal's last quarterly report, which is filed publicly in Chicago, and I know that they cleared $400,000 on the Kansas Plains acquisition last year alone. $50,000 is not an offer, Mr. Halloran. It is an insult dressed for Sunday. He took his offer back. He rode out. The second offer came 2 weeks later, from a different man. $120,000. The third, a month after that, came from the railroad itself. That one was for $200,000. Abigail laid the third letter on the table at the cooperative meeting and watched the faces around it. There were 11 faces now. With the water rights confirmed and the federal protection in place, every honest rancher in the valley wanted in. 11 men and women sat around the table at the widow Esquibel's house, and the letter sat in the middle, and nobody spoke for a long time. Donnelly spoke first. $200,000. Yes. Divided 11 ways. Yes. That is more money than any of us has ever seen in our lives. It is. Mrs. Walker, I think we should take it. She looked at him. Why? Because $200,000 is $200,000. And then what, Mr. Donnelly? And then I take my share and I move my family to Denver and I open a hardware store and I never worry about water rights or droughts or railroad men for the rest of my life. You will worry about other things. Other things are not these things. They are the same thing, Mr. Donnelly. Every place a man builds, men come to take it. There is no Denver where they will not come for you. There is no hardware store where the law will not bend if a richer man wants it bent. Maybe so. But I will at least have the money in hand. The widow Esquibel spoke. I will not sell. McKinney spoke. Nor will I. Donnelly's brother spoke. I am with my brother. 2 of the new ranchers said they were with Donnelly. 3 said they were with Esquibel. The room split down the middle and held there. We will vote, Abigail said. Not tonight. 2 weeks from tonight. Every signatory will have a voice. In the meantime, I will ask each of you to think on a thing. What thing, Mrs. Walker? On what we agreed to when we signed." She did not say more. The sabotage began 3 days later. A cooperative water tank was found split open in the night drained dry. A bull belonging to McKinney was found dead with a stomach full of crushed glass. A rider broke a fence line on the southern boundary and let 40 head of Donnelly's cattle out into the brush. Donnelly came to the ranch in the morning, hat in his hand. His face had the closed, embarrassed look of a man who has been thinking thoughts he is ashamed of. "Mrs. Walker?" "Mr. Donnelly." "Did you see who did it?" "No." "Who do you think did it?" "I think a man who is being paid $200,000 for the inconvenience does not need to drain a water tank." "You think it was the railroad?" "I think it was somebody who wants us to vote yes. I do not know yet who." "It was not me." "I did not say it was." "I would not." "Mr. Donnelly, look at me." He looked at her. "Whoever it is, they are betting that fear will move us, that we will get tired, that we will look at our broken fences and our dead cattle, and we will say, 'Take the money, get us out of here.' They are betting that we are smaller than we are. And if they are right, then we are smaller than we are, and we will have earned every dollar of that 200,000 and not a cent more." He stood there a long time. "Mrs. Walker?" "Yes. My boy is 14. He has been having dreams about his uncle who died last winter from a horse fall. He wakes up screaming. My wife has not slept a full night in 2 months. I am tired, Mrs. Walker. I am bone tired." "I know you are." "I want my family safe." "I know. And selling sounds like safe to me." "Selling is not safe, Mr. Donnelly. Selling is a different kind of unsafe, wearing a coat." He looked at the floor. "I will think on it." "Thank you." He rode out. 2 nights later, Luke caught the man. He did not catch him alone. He had been watching the southern fence line for a week with old Hollis Greer at the other end, and when the rider came in to cut the wire again, Greer fired into the air, and the rider ran straight into Luke's pistol on the road home. The rider was a hired man out of El Paso. He had a list of names in his pocket, and 3 crisp $20 bills, and a single folded telegram with no signature on it that read in a clean clerk's hand, "Accelerate." Luke brought the rider to the kitchen with his hands tied behind him. He sat him down on a chair. He set the telegram on the table. This came out of his pocket. She read it. "Who paid you?" The rider did not speak. "Who paid you, sir?" "I do not know, ma'am. I was hired by a third hand. I never saw the man whose money it was." "Who passed you the telegram?" "A clerk in Las Cruces." "Whose clerk?" He hesitated. "Sir?" "A judge's clerk." "What judge?" "A territorial judge. Holt is in jail. The new one is named Birchfield." She looked at Luke. "Birchfield. I have heard the name. He took Holt's seat last month. They replaced one bought judge with another." "They did." She turned back to the rider. "Sir, you will write down the name of every man who passed you money or instruction in the last 60 days. You will write it down on this paper. You will write it now. And then my husband will take you to the federal marshal in Santa Fe, and you will say it again to him under oath, and you will not see the inside of a prison if you do. And if I do not, then my husband will take you to a different place." The writer wrote. When he was done, there were 8 names on the paper. 2 of them belonged to men who had signed the cooperative complaint. She folded the paper. She did not look at Luke. She did not look at the writer. She put the paper inside her dress, against the same place she had kept the burial date of Tomas Reyes a season ago, and she went into the bedroom, and she shut the door, and she sat on the edge of the bed, and she did not move for a long time. Luke knocked once. "Ma'am?" "Yes." "You all right?" "No, Mr. Walker." "Ma'am." "They were ours. They sat at our table. They held my hand and prayed with me at the courthouse. They voted with me 3 times, and now they have been selling us to a man in El Paso who is paying them out of a railroad account." "I know." "Mr. Walker." "Yes, ma'am." "I do not know if I can do this part." He did not answer for a moment. Then she heard the latch of the door turn, and he came in, and he sat on the wooden chest at the foot of the bed, and he did not touch her. "Ma'am." "Yes. You can do this part." "How do you know?" "Because you have done every other part, and this is just the next part, and there is not a single thing harder about it than the things you have already done. You think there is. There is not. It is just one more day." She did not speak. "Ma'am?" "Yes." "Tell me what to do and I will do it." She looked up at him. "Mr. Walker." "Yes." "I am going to need you to ride." "Where?" "Everywhere." "All right." The two men whose names were on the paper did not vote at the meeting 2 weeks later. They did not come to the meeting. They had ridden out of the valley in the night with whatever they had been able to pack on a single horse each, because Bean had filed a sealed federal indictment for them on the strength of the rider's affidavit, and because Luke had ridden to each of their ranches at first light with the affidavit in his saddlebag and laid it on each of their tables and said only, "You have until sundown." They were gone by noon. The vote came on a Thursday. 11 signatories around the widow Esquibel's table, minus the 2 who had left plus 3 new ranchers who had asked to join after the news of Holt's arrest spread. 12 voices. The final railroad offer had risen in the meantime to $2 million. Split 12 ways. $166,000 per ranch. When Donnelly walked into the room, his hat was in his hand. "Mrs. Walker?" "Mr. Donnelly, I have thought. Yes. I am voting no." "Why?" "Because of what you said. About the men who tried to scare me. They are still betting that we are smaller than we are. I would like for once in my life to be bigger than somebody bet I was." She looked at him a long moment. "Thank you, Mr. Donnelly." The vote was 12-0. Bean stood at the end of the table with a paper in his hand. He had been working on it for 2 months. He had ridden to Santa Fe and to Albuquerque and to Topeka and to St. Louis. He had spoken to lawyers in 3 states. He had drafted and redrafted and drafted again. He laid the paper on the table. "This is a land trust. Once each of you signs it, your land becomes property of the trust. The trust holds it in common. No member can sell out alone. No corporation can buy any single member out. The land cannot be sold in whole or in part except by the unanimous vote of every signatory. Not a majority. Every one. If a single member refuses, no sale happens. Ever. Your children inherit your seat in the trust. Your grandchildren inherit theirs. The land is taken out of the market for the rest of human time, or until 12 grown men and women, all related to you, all sitting in this same room 100 years from now, decide together that it should not be. The room did not breathe. "Sign," Abigail said. They signed. She signed last. Outside when it was done, she walked down the porch steps, and Luke was standing by the wagon, and she came up to him, and she did not say anything, and she put her face against the front of his shirt, just for a moment, just long enough that anybody watching from the house might have thought she was checking the wagon harness. He did not move. He did not put his arms around her. He waited. "Mr. Walker." "Ma'am?" "I am not afraid of you." "I know." "I have not been afraid of you since the day on the wagon." "I know that too. I would like when we get home for you to sit at the table with me, not at the other end, the seat next to mine." "Yes, ma'am." "And I would like you to eat your supper there from now on." "Yes, ma'am." "And I would like when supper is over for you to stay there, not go off to the porch." "Yes, ma'am." "That is all?" "Yes, ma'am." "That is enough for now." "Yes, ma'am." He helped her up onto the wagon. She did not need the help. She let him give it to her anyway. He climbed up beside her. He picked up the reins. He clicked his tongue. The mare started forward the same patient roan that had carried her out of the courthouse on the day she had been bought for $190, and an apology that had never been spoken aloud. And Abigail Walker looked down at her hands in her lap, and they were not trembling, and the road home in front of her was long and golden, and her own. The mare carried them home that night, and the windows of the ranch house had been left open all day, and the wind had moved through the curtains, and there was no fear in the rooms, not for the first time in years. That night, Luke sat in the chair next to hers at the table. He stayed. He stayed the next night, and the night after that, and at the end of the week, he came in from a long day on the south fence, and he washed his hands at the basin, and he sat down in the same chair, and he said, "Ma'am?" "Yes?" "There is a thing I have been meaning to ask." "Ask it." "I would like if you would have me to be your husband. Not the paper kind. The other kind. Whenever you are ready, and not a day before, and not at all if you are never ready." She looked at him across the table. "Mr. Walker?" "Yes, ma'am." "I have been ready since the day on the wagon." "Ma'am?" "Yes. That is what I was hoping you would say. It took you a year and a half to ask." "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" "Because I gave you my word that I would not. And I did not want to be a man who took back his word the moment he wanted to." She put her hand across the table. He took it. He did not crush it. He held it the way a man holds a thing he has been waiting all his life to hold. That was the spring of 1884. By the autumn, the trust had filed and recorded 11,000 acres of valley land. By the winter, the cooperative had a buyer in Kansas City, paying the highest market rate in the territory. By the following spring, 2 more valleys north of theirs had written to ask how they had done it, and Abigail had written back, in her clear, small hand, with copies of the trust documents and the cooperative bylaws, and a single line at the bottom of every letter that read, "You may use any of this. The only payment we ask is that you tell us how it goes." The letters back began arriving in the summer. The first was from a valley in southern Colorado, where 4 farmers had pooled their grain harvest and broken a syndicate that had been paying them half price for 9 years. The second was from a Mexican-American family in California who had recovered title to a ranch that had been stolen by a railroad in the 70s. The third was from a woman in Oregon, a widow with 3 sons who had walked into a foreclosure auction with the Walker bylaws in her hand and read them aloud to the auctioneer, and the auctioneer had stopped the auction. Abigail read the letters at the kitchen table. She read them out loud to Luke. She kept them in the same wooden chest that had once held only a hairbrush and a Bible and a wedding ring she would not sell. By 86, the chest was full. By 87, she had had to buy a second chest. The first invitation to speak in public came from a Grange Hall in Pueblo, Colorado, in the spring of 88. She did not want to go. "Mr. Walker?" "Yes, ma'am." "I am not a speaker." "No, ma'am. I do not know what I would say." "You would say what you have said in every letter you have written for 4 years." "That is on paper." "Words are words, ma'am. They do not change because you are saying them out of your mouth." "They do." "Maybe so. But you will go anyway." "Why?" "Because the woman in Oregon went to her foreclosure auction with your paper in her hand, and the woman in Colorado is going to walk into that hall expecting to see the woman who wrote it. She went. She wore the same dress she had worn to the federal courthouse in Santa Fe 4 years before. She had let it out twice and taken it in once, and the seams were honest, now not strained the way they had been the day the auctioneer had pinned a number across her chest and called her livestock. There were 60 people in the Grange Hall. Most of them were women. She stood at the front. She had a paper in her hand. She had written every word the night before. She looked at the paper. She looked at the women. She set the paper down. "My name is Abigail Walker. I was born Amish. I was sold at auction in New Mexico Territory in the spring of 1882 for $190. The man who paid the debt is sitting in the back of this room. He is a quiet man, and he does not like crowds, but he came because I asked him to come. I want you to know I would not be standing here if not for him. And I want you to know he would not be sitting there if not for me. We saved each other. Neither of us did it alone. Anyone who tells you the story of one good woman or one good man is leaving out half the truth. 60 women did not make a sound. They called me worthless. They called me lazy. They called me a burden. They put a wooden number across my chest in front of 100 people, and they laughed when nobody bid. I want you to hear me when I say this next part, because I have been a long time learning it. They did not call me worthless because I was worthless. They called me worthless because they needed me to believe it. A woman who believes she is worthless does not ask questions. She does not read the books. She does not look at the deed. She does not stand up in the courthouse. She does not sign her name. They needed me small. They needed all of you small, because the only way the men with the money keep what they have is if the rest of us agree every morning to be smaller than we are. A woman in the second row began to weep. I am not a special woman. I want you to hear that too. I am not smarter than any of you. I am not braver. I am not stronger. I am only a woman who got tired of being told she was nothing. There is no other secret. There is no trick. Every one of you in this room can do exactly what I did. The only thing standing between you and the rest of your life is whether you are willing to read the books, whether you are willing to write down the date, whether you are willing to walk into a courtroom in a dress that does not fit and tell a judge who has been bought that a dead man cannot sign a deed. She held up the paper she had not read from. I came here with a speech. I am not going to give it. I came here with bylaws instead. I am leaving them on this table when I go. They are yours. Take them. Use them. Mail them to your sisters. Mail them to your mothers. Mail them to the woman down the road whose husband drinks. The men who took everything from us did it with paper. The only way we take it back is with paper of our own. And there is plenty of paper in this country, and there are plenty of women in it who can read. She walked off the platform. She did not stay for questions. She was not yet the woman who could stay for questions. In the wagon on the way back to the train, Luke did not speak for a long time. Then he said, "Ma'am." "Yes?" "That woman in the second row." "Yes." "She came up to me after." "What did she say?" "She said her husband died in '83, and her brother-in-law took the farm. She said she has been sleeping on her sister's floor for 5 years. She said she is going home tomorrow with your bylaws, and she is going to take her farm back." "Will she?" "I think she will." "Mr. Walker." "Yes, ma'am." "Do you remember what I said on the wagon the day you brought me home?" "I remember every word you said on that wagon. I said I had not been useful to anyone in 3 years. I remember." "I do not say that anymore." "No, ma'am." "I want you to know I am still afraid. I am afraid every time I stand up. I am afraid every time I write a letter. I am afraid I will say the wrong thing and a woman will hear me and do the wrong thing because I said it." "Yes, ma'am." "It does not stop me." "No, ma'am." That is the part I want you to remember if you ever forget the rest. Brave is not the absence of fear. Brave is the fear staying the same and you doing the thing anyway. "I will remember." "Promise me." "I promise, ma'am." By 1890, she had spoken in 14 towns across 6 states and territories. By '92, she had been written about in newspapers in Boston and Philadelphia and Atlanta. A New York editor came west to interview her in her own kitchen. He was a small man with ink on his fingers, and he asked her questions for 2 days, and at the end of the second day, he closed his notebook and said, "Mistress Walker." "Mr. Pell, I came here expecting to find a saint. You did not find one." "No, ma'am, I found a bookkeeper." "That is correct. It is going to make a better article." "I should hope so." He published the article in the spring of '93. It ran for 6 pages. It carried her photograph, the only one she had ever sat for, taken on the porch of the ranch, with Luke standing behind her chair with his hand on the back of it. Not on her, just on the chair, the way a man stands behind a thing he respects. The article ran in 300 newspapers across the country. The letters that came in the months afterward filled 4 chests. She kept writing back. She kept sending bylaws. She kept naming the women who wrote to her in the bedside book. She had begun to keep the book that grew year over year into a register of 1,000 farms, saved 100 cooperatives, founded 20 land trusts, filed in 12 states. She did not call it a movement. She did not like the word. She said when asked, "I do not run a movement, sir. I run a postal correspondence." But the country called it a movement anyway. The country called her many things. Some of them she liked. Most of them she did not. She did not allow her photograph to be reprinted after '95. She did not allow herself to be named in headlines after '98. The work was the work, she said. It did not need her face on it. It needed paper and stamps and women who could read. Luke aged the way a quiet man ages, slow at the edges, his hair going first at the temples and then everywhere. He never grew loud. He never grew large. He sat at the kitchen table beside her every supper, and he listened to her read the letters out loud, and he said sometimes when she had read a particularly hard one, "Ma'am." "Yes." "Write that woman back tonight." "I will." "Tonight, ma'am." "Yes, Mr. Walker, tonight." They had no children. The doctor in Santa Fe told her in 1886 that there would be none. She wept for an hour in the kitchen, and Luke held her hand across the table. And when she had finished weeping, she had said, "We will be enough for each other." And he had said, "Yes, ma'am, we will." And they had been. She lived to be 73 years old. She died in her own bed in the house Luke had built for her by hand the summer of '96, with the windows open, and the brush running gold to the horizon, and the creek running clear past the foot of the yard. The same creek a railroad had once tried to take from her with a forged paper and a dead man's name. The valley turned out for her funeral. The widow Esquibel was 89. She walked from her wagon to the grave on her own 2 feet because Abigail Walker, she said, had not been a woman who needed to be carried and would not have wanted her friends carried either. Donnelly's grandson read the service. He was 20 years old. He had been born in the trust. He would die in it. Luke lived another 6 years. He did not speak much in those years, even less than he had before. He sat on the porch in the evenings with his hand on the rail of her chair, and he watched the road, and he watched the brush. And one morning in the spring of 1909, the new ranch hand came in and found him still in the chair, his hat tipped down, his hand still resting on the rail. The way a man waits for a wagon he knows is coming. They buried him beside her, and the work she had begun went on. The Walker Trust still holds 11,000 acres of New Mexico Valley land in undivided common. It cannot be sold. It cannot be subdivided. It cannot be optioned. It is owned by the great-grandchildren of 12 men and women who sat around a kitchen table in 1883 and decided by a vote of 12 to nothing that they would be bigger than somebody had bet they were. The bylaws she wrote that summer are still printed. They are not copyrighted. Anyone may use them. The first paragraph reads, "This land is held in trust against the day when somebody comes for it. They will come. They always come. They will come with money, and they will come with paper, and they will come with armed men and bought judges and lawyers in coats. The undersigned, having known these visitors personally, do hereby agree that no one of us alone or in any combination short of all of us shall be empowered to give them what they have come for." There is a second paragraph. It is not legally binding. It was added by the founder against the advice of her own attorney, and it has been preserved by every subsequent amendment, and it reads in full, "To the woman reading this who has been told she is worthless, you are not. They needed you to believe it. You need not." She had written the line on a Tuesday. She had written it in pencil. She had crossed it out twice. She had written it again. And she had let it stand. A woman was auctioned in a New Mexico courthouse in the spring of 1882. The crowd called her worthless and laughed. They were wrong. She was not rescued, and she was not saved, and she was not chosen. She was a bookkeeper who got tired. She read the books. She wrote down the date. She walked into a courtroom in a dress that did not fit. And she changed everything.